I think this is a great place to grow old, personally. I'm looking forward to it here. I think it's going to be great.
What can AgeTech founders learn from Japan, the world's oldest society? And why is it such a tough but rewarding market to enter? In this episode of the AgeTech podcast, I'm joined by Dominic Carter, CEO of the Carter JMRN Group, a market research firm deeply embedded in the Japanese market. We'll unpack the challenges international startups face when entering Japan, explore the unique cultural attitudes towards aging and technology, and discuss where the biggest opportunities are for innovators like yourself. Dominic, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Keren. It's lovely to be here.
Thank you. So the last guest we had from the Carter Group on our show was Debbie, and that was around 3 years ago. Can you maybe bring us up to speed on what has been going on in the Japanese market after, let's start with after the COVID restrictions were lifted and Japan reopened itself to global visitors?
Yes, well, I mean, we've been plugging away at our project that focuses on age tech called Living Best for the last 3 years, and that's involved. We've been recruiting a community of professionals, and this could be people who are consultants, academic, people working in corporations, anybody who's interested in the area of age tech as an answer to the challenges that we have in an aging society in Japan. At the same time, we've been recruiting a community of rank and file users, if you like, that exhibit some more kind of leading edge characteristics. So they're more open to tech than average, but they're still, basically ordinary everyday people. And we've been recruiting those people face to face over 3 years. So we have almost 1,000 people that we've touched so far, and we're still going through the process of getting to know these guys in more detail. But certainly there are several projects that we've worked on where we've enlisted our community's help, both on the professional side and on the user side, to basically give us some guidance in terms of how we can best approach introducing some of this innovation into Japan.
That is quite remarkable. Over 1,000 users, that is a significant user base that you can sort of reach out to get insights from. There is, obviously, everyone knows that Japan is one of the most aging societies on earth on one hand, and also one of the societies that also has a massive respect for its aging population, which you don't see in the West quite as much. So there is a huge potential there, and there's a huge interest from startups to tap into that market. Can you maybe talk about some of the unique challenges that foreign startups face when they try to enter the Japanese market?
Yes, I mean, language is obviously a big one because not many people in Japan speak English. So even just basic communication is an issue. Some assumptions about the sophistication of the general user in Japan may be incorrect. So we've done work, basically comparing incidence rates of technology adoption in Japan versus the US. With 2 years ago, we sort of mirrored an AARP survey, and we found that yes, Japanese are very, they're very good users of smartphones, and they're good users of laptops. So penetration is very high of those two devices. But when you go into the more kind of applied tech like smart speakers and so forth, the whole gamut, there's much less use of technology in Japan than there is, let's say, in the US, for example. So the assumption about the sophistication of the audience as a market for tech in Japan sometimes may be a little bit overestimated. And so, so it can be quite challenging. So you have your language problem. Also, it can be quite slow to build relationships in Japan. So everything works on trust initially. I mean, it does in all human relationships, but in Japan in particular, people really do need to know who they're doing business with before you can really get anywhere. So it takes longer. There's there's more of a commitment that you possibly need to make in this market compared to some other markets, just in terms of the work that you put into building your relationships. But on the other hand, we are the oldest population in the world. The median age in Japan is actually 51. and I'm 51, so I'm not old in Japan, so I have to live here. But you have almost a third of the population who's over 65 now. So in a sense, everything in Japan, if you've got half of the population over 50, you could look at everything that happens in Japan, or every innovation that comes in that has to be adopted, really does have an aging aspect to it. So you've got a great market here, and it's obviously a growing market. And when you speak to Japanese people, they will tell you that the most pressing social issue that they have is what they do about what they call their super aging society. And I like to think of that. It would be great if we can not reframe this, if we can not frame this as a problem all the time, or if we could reframe it as something that looks more like an opportunity. I think this is a much more positive way of looking at what we're facing here.
Absolutely. And it's, it is surprising that the country that exports technology globally, you still see its older generation not adopting technology quite as much. So the people who built Sony and Toyota, maybe in their later years only use like their personal device, their laptop or computer, but you don't see people equipping their homes with all of the smart devices that you might see in other countries.
Yes, it's a little bit ironic in a way. I mean, there's a few things at play though. So people stay at home and are looked after by their caregivers for longer on average in Japan. So people go into care later on average. So if you have somebody who's caring for you, you might not need all of the technology, right? The caregiver, of course, may well be open to have something to make their life easier. But if you're the recipient of that and you've got somebody who's kind of basically waiting on you, the need is not as high. But the issue is in the long term. If we look at, let's say, people my age in Japan are the largest group in the population. Our generation is looking after the older generation. There is currently enough tax base to look after the older generation, but younger than us, if you look at the generation that's younger than us, there's certainly not enough people. There simply isn't enough people to really adequately have that kind of in-home care, and from a financial perspective, it's an issue as well. So those issues are there. So the boomers, in a way, who traditionally were the largest group in the population in Japan, it's kind of changing a little bit. They didn't have to worry so much about tech, and they were looked after. I think it's really people in my generation who are in their 50s. We're the ones that really are going to have to be, very, very comfortable with tech, and we're going to really have to make up for the gaps in care that's going to be available to us with tech. So I think it really is incumbent upon people who are sort of in my generation and my sort of counterparts who are Japanese to take that on. Having said that, with people's sort of attitudes to tech, I mean, if we look at something like robotics, for example, older Japanese, we have in Western culture, we have this weird kind of dystopian thing going on about robots and tech, and eventually it's going to take over and possibly kill us. We don't have that so much in Japan, where tech and advancement has always been really not really seen as such a negative, maybe in some ways. So I think that in some ways there's more positivity and emotional openness and availability to some of the tech that's just around the corner. Thank goodness, given the challenges that we have.
Yes, I recall when I visited Tokyo to attend a Carter JMRN event, I went to like one of the malls, and there was just a social robot store at the mall. So they had those soft toy robots, I forgot the name, and the para robot. And it was like, it was surprising. It's not something you expect to see in a mall, but in Japan, I guess it's what I should have expected.
Yeah, and they're cute. I think maybe it's a love off or something like that. They're cute. There's a certain way, I was having a conversation with a company the other day that's produced a a toy companion animal with some sort of, robot characteristics in it. And I was saying, okay, it looks a little bit too much like a cat. Like actually, you don't have to be quite so representational. In Japan, it could just look. There's I can't remember the name of it, but there's something that launched recently. I saw it on TV the other night. It's like just a furry blob, and people are going crazy over it. So the way that stuff is responded to and so forth can be sort of really unique and interesting. And of course, that's why people love coming to Japan, because it can be a little bit quirky like that. But yeah, there is certainly even now popular robots that people are taking into their home.
Do you see the?
I don't think they're particularly useful, but there is that kind of openness to it.
Speaking of the Lovebot or Lovebot, I'm not sure what the name is. That seemed to be a very popular robot. I mean, if it's sold in malls, do you see that the older generation is also receptive of these types of robots, or are they perceived as like toys and gadgets for kids?
I think there are some people who are there are some elderly people who are very, very open to all forms of tech, and would be quite open to that. I think I mean, I think if you give it to someone who's past a certain stage, I think it could be very comforting, these sorts of robots. I'm not sure exactly how closely or profoundly integrated they are into people's lives at the moment, but the potential is certainly there as they become more intelligent, as you become able to converse with them, as the robots are able to sort of adjust the way that they speak with you. To some of the research that we've done in robotics has shown that there's no one way, or it's kind of obvious, but there's no one way in which people want to interact with the robot. They may want it to be a servant, they may want it to be a friend, whatever it is. It may have something to do with the way that they interact with the people in their life already. But I think that as they're probably a bit gimmicky at the moment, but I think as the tech improves, and as I think people are able to more sort of authentically engage with them, I think it's going to become more and more important. But basically, people are pretty happy to be working with robots, and I suspect that doesn't have the kind of possible stigma that it has in Western countries. That, like, there's this movie called Megan. I don't know if you've seen it, and it's this sort of silly movie about a companion robot for a little girl that kind of takes over and becomes very antisocial and ends up trying to kill everybody. But that's a very kind of Western trope about robots, and I think it doesn't really hold in Japan, where we have Astro Boy and Atom Boy / Astro Boy and whatever has been sort of part of the culture. So
yeah, it's definitely there is definitely a cultural difference in the way robots are perceived in Japan versus in the West. So assuming we have people in the audience who are starting out their AgeTech journey and they want to build something that could apply to the Japanese market as well, what types of unsolved challenges or unsolved needs do you see that Japan's older population currently has that isn't being served by traditional means or with technology?
Yes, I think that they're very similar to the issues that I think people would have anywhere. So in terms of what the basic needs are, I think that I think caregiving is a big burden, because, as I say, I think that a lot of the slack in terms of this, what happens as people age, is taken up by family members in Japan, and it's still, even though it's not as prevalent as it used to be, a lot of the burden of care falls on family members. So I think that ways that we can help people who are caregivers, I think, is very important. I think there's a lot of interest in people staying healthy so that they're not a burden on others. It's very unacceptable in Japanese culture to just to be a burden to other people and expect other people to take care of you before you really need it. So things that keep you kind of mentally sharp as well. So things like brain training, I think has a lot of potential in Japan, and we're looking at projects in that area as well. And it's actually not just for people who are aging. Like there's a wide range of people who are interested in something like brain training, for example. So if you have a product that can have sort of like a wide age appeal, and it doesn't have to be specifically targeted at aging adults, it may have a wider application that also gets taken up by aging adults and is very useful. I think that might be one way of looking at it as well. But whatever it is that you do, I think it's very, very important that we first of all determine whether there actually is a real demand or a real need for what it is that you're making. And we've done in the last 6 months about 170 pure product concept tests of every type of AgeTech concept you could imagine. So we've kind of scoured the world and tested people's concepts, and we're communicating with some of the companies whose concepts we've tested. But I think it's very important to establish first of all that there actually is a genuine need for what it is that you're making, and people come to those tasks with a lot of heart energy, and they really want to, they really do want to help people, but there's a high failure rate of those innovations, and I think some of it has to do with maybe not being quite the right concept for the market in the first place. So I think we can talk about what all of the potential opportunities, unmet needs are, and whatever. I think they're very similar in Japan as they are in other countries, but I think it's very, very important to do some sort of research and validation as if you're looking at the market here. And then, yes, we move on to let's actually work with users and work at how we can adapt so that if it's a great idea, we can actually make it work in real life. But that's kind of the way that we tend to look at it. So everything's an opportunity in theory. In practice, what will work and what is actually definitely worth working on and investing in may be a small number out of a large number of possible concepts.
So you mentioned that you had over 100 concepts tested with Japanese elders.
Yeah, almost 200 actually. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is a lot. Were most of these concepts newly formed and to meet Japan as the first market, or were some of these proven concepts from other markets and the companies just want to test how it's going to work for them in Japan?
Yes, it's a mix. Some of them, what we did is we looked at a whole range of different startups mostly, and we looked at what they were doing. And so the way that we did our surveys, we said it's based on a survey of users who age 40 to 80 and population representatives. So we're sort of getting people who might be buying for their parents as well as people who might be buying for themselves and so forth. And so we surveyed at the level of a product that meets this need and works this way, and we're testing, would this be interesting to you? If we had a brain training product that could, give you measurable feedback on your progress, or it could, improve your cognitive ability measurably, or, whatever it is, a special type of wheelchair or hearing aid, or, whatever it was, just at a very sort of pure product level, a product that does this. Product does this, how interesting would it be? Would you buy it for yourself? Would you buy it for someone else? Would you let someone else buy it for you? Those sorts of questions. And so we sort of have ended up where we've now got a fairly good idea of what the sort of raw theoretical potential of these concepts are. So we've isolated maybe 1 in 20 of those concepts as being what I'd call kind of superstars, that we say, okay, this is in the market, these products look like they'll have a momentum, like they're so attractive that they're going to have a momentum of their own. And I the reason why I want to focus on those high potential concepts is that Japan's a difficult market to enter. It's difficult for Japanese companies to launch into. It's difficult for overseas companies to launch into it. So we really want to start on third. We really want to start on third base. And I think in the bigger picture, I want to make sure that we can create some wins in AgeTech, so that we can point to some success and sort of avoid the possibility that people just throw their hands up and say, oh, it's too difficult, because we know the user issues are very difficult. Obviously, aging adults are not, they're not so great at picking up tech. They need help to do it. If you're talking about B2B buyers or, care facilities, whatever, they've got their own organizational issues that can make adopting new technology challenging. So what our objective in Living Best is basically to find some kind of hero concepts that we can work with, show some success, and then light a path for the next ones to come and create some very successful stories, so that we're not permanently talking about the potential of this sector, or actually delivering some actual measurable findings. Some measurable results. So we've set a pretty high bar for what we need to do, but yeah, I really think that that's what we need to do in AgeTech, is just be really trying to find projects where we can get some early wins. The bigger picture and the more sort of long range projects, of course, they are also being worked on, and they're also exceptionally important, and they will come in. But for what we need to do, and to sort of, I think, pave the way, especially on the user side, to get everyday people excited about AgeTech, I think, is something that we need to do. And in order to do that, it's way too theoretical to talk to them about, like, here's what it could be like in 5 years, or here's what it could be like in 10 years. We've got to say, here's something that you can use right now, that will improve your life right now, or that will help you with the challenge you have looking after your mum or your dad right now, or is going to make life easier for you as an aging adult right now. And that's kind of what we're focused on, and they're the projects that we're currently focused on.
Absolutely. Would you say that if we look at like founder market fit, generally speaking, founder market fit in the AgeTech ecosystem, it's generally, I would say that it's best to have someone on the founding team with access to the market and with experience in the market. Would you say that for international startups who try to enter the Japanese market, they should have someone with some Japanese background on the founding team, someone who either was born and raised in Japan or has spent a significant number of time in their lives living in Japan and sort of immersing themselves in the culture?
Yes, I think it helps. Sometimes, though, that can help, but of course it may not be enough, because Japan's such a unique place. So I think that helps, and certainly helps in the motivation of the startup if you've got somebody who is, who profiles like that on the founding team. I think it's very important to have a Japanese partner somehow in there. So my sort of ideal scenario for a startup would be if you can find someone in Japan who you can partner with. It's very, very hard if you don't have a Japanese person in there helping you with your meetings and just developing those relationships. It's just a little bit too hard, even if you've got a genuine, authentic interest, or some sort of background, maybe your parents were Japanese or whatever it is, but you need somebody I think it really lives in the market here and knows how to talk to people and knows how to do business development and knows how to behave in expected ways in Japan. I think is very important. And if you can and so that's not enough to have someone like that. I mean, they need you because you're the one bringing the innovation. So I think that trusting relationship that you need to have, you need the market to trust you, but where trust has to start is between you and who it is you might work as your local partner. And if you could find somebody who's really values wise a fit for you and who's really genuinely excited by what it is that you're doing, and then that person will probably do amazing things working with you. But I think you really need to have somebody who is local to work with you, and it will just make life a lot easier. It's just very, very difficult unless you've got somebody who's really, really well penetrated into those networks and knows how to do all of the groundwork and the spade work that you need to do if you're going to be selling into the market. So yeah, it's a matter of, obviously you've got to come here, you've got to meet people, you've got to work out, you've got to meet people where there's good chemistry, the good competence and chemistry and all of that kind of thing. And I think work it from there. And of course, I'm very happy to help startups as well. If through the community connections that we've got, of course, if there are people that we know who we think would be interesting people to meet or to speak with or to advise or, what have you, I'm only too happy to do that. But yeah, like that to be working in this market, you really do need to have somebody on the ground who's really very committed to you.
Absolutely. So it's either like hire someone to have on your team to be the boots on the ground, or work with a partner. Would you say that it's possible for startups to have, let's say startups who have a product that doesn't require localization, to just find a distributor? Is that something that startups can do? Because I've seen startups do it in English-speaking markets. Just find a distributor who distributes sometimes even on their own brand, and they just get the job done.
Yes, everyone wants to do that, of course, but yes, I think it's possible. I mean, I can give you an example. Maybe like we're working with a company called Comfort Linen, and it's not digital tech. I mean, it's fiber tech. There is some definite IP in the product itself, but they're sheets and pajamas that are low friction. So if people have Parkinson's or movement disorders, especially Parkinson's disease, that of course the sufferers of Parkinson's tend to be older. This makes life a lot easier in bed. Now, there's very little adaptation that needs to be done with that product. It's just the bed sizing and the clothing sizing. You just need to make different sizing. And so in that sense, yes, that can be. And we're working with that company at the moment to sort of get distribution for them, and we're basically we've launched an e-commerce site very recently, and we're looking at B2B channels and so forth. And that product doesn't require very much adaptation. So there are products that don't require that much adaptation. And yes, you can. If you can find a distributor, that's good. But the issue with distributors is if you go with the first one you meet, there'll be a reason why they're interested in your product, but it may not be the reason. You may not be wanting quite the same thing. So they may only want one product out of your range, or they may be looking just to plug something, and so the rest of what you do may not be of interest to them, or so they won't sell it, they won't push it. And so there can be a lot of, and just one example, but there can be a lot of misunderstandings between companies and distributors in terms of expectations and so forth. So I think it's probably safer to have a partner here who could probably help you work through the different distributors that you may need to work with. You may need to work with more than one distributor, or the type of type of distributor that you need to work with may change over time, and just to sort of help you develop that, I think is probably a bit safer than just going with the first one that you meet. It's very, very important that you know them, that you know each other very well. Even if you think that it's a fairly simple task for the distributor, I think you need to get to know them.
Yeah, absolutely. It absolutely does make sense to, not just necessarily sign with the first distributor that shows interest, because they might have, I assume some of them have like catalogs of products that they distribute if they're B2B, and they just might want something to fill a void. But like you said, they might not
Correct.
necessarily be
Yes.
interested in whatever else that the company has to offer. Although for a startup, it's often just one product that they have anyway.
Yes, yes. I mean, look, distributors also may take you on just to stop you. They'll sometimes take product on to sort of control it in the market if they view it as being a threat. You know, there's all sorts of dynamics that happen, and it's very, as I say, it's just very, very important to get to know them. What's their track record in the area? Like, how committed do they look like to you? And of course, if you're a startup, there are things that are going to go wrong. So how patient are they going to be with you, with the challenges that you have? And you know, maybe in production, or you know, whatever it is. So I think you're really looking for, I think even if it seems like a simple distribution task, you really are looking for someone who can partner with you, and partnering with you means that, you know, both sides have got to they've got to give something into that relationship. And, you know, it can't just be a case of you give this to me and I do this. And if you don't deliver, I don't do what I'm supposed to do. Like, you really want to work with people that I think really believe in what it is that you're doing. Like, they believe in what we're doing in aging related innovation, and they believe in you, and they like you, and they want to support you. I think that personal part of it, I think, is super, super important, because sometimes that's all you've got. And yeah.
So my last question is about sort of what brought you to start the Carter Associates, and also you've been doing this for decades. You weren't born in Japan. So what would you say is like the number one counterintuitive thing that you've learned over the past years when doing research into the Japanese market?
Yeah, well, lots. I mean, when I heard you ask that, I guess sort of one of the interesting things, maybe this is about me a little bit, but I learned to listen a lot more being in this market. And it's kind of, I really have to laugh when I think about it. But when I came to Japan at first, I really thought I was here to teach, and it's ridiculous. I was in my early 20s, but you know, I thought, okay, you know, I'm gonna, and I think this can be a very humbling market for you if you don't listen, and you don't genuinely respect. And I think, you know, if you don't respect, the market will teach you respect, and that can be a very uncomfortable experience. But I think one of the aspects of respect that's important cross-culturally is that we don't try to change. We don't look at people and say, why do you do it that way? Like, like a classic example is like websites in Japan. Like, websites in Japan to foreigners look absolutely madcap. They look ridiculous. Like, the amount of information on there, and just how much, and we look at it, and but of course, you know, from the Japanese user perspective, like the way that they look for information and the way they make decisions is in some ways a little bit different to us. So respecting the market, respecting the user, is actually about listening to what they tell you. Like, a lot of businesses come into the market, and they want to apply their playbook that works in other markets, and they'll say, oh, well, it works in China, why doesn't it work here? Or it works in America, or, you know. And I think success is found by listening, and people will tell you what they want. they'll tell you what they like and what they don't like and what they would like to see changed in your approach and your products. And I think over the years, the people that have listened to that are the ones that I've seen succeed. And sometimes it may appear odd. Why, for example, in food, why do Japanese people like, stuff that has, a weaker taste, a weaker flavor? Why? And, take it out of AgeTech in cleaning products. I remember working on a project where literally we were going in and cleaning bathrooms with people, and they were saying, well, I don't actually want the product to clean too well, because when I come back tomorrow, I'm not going to have anything to do. And, I don't want a product that I don't want an all-in-one product that will clean everything, So in a sense, sometimes when things are too efficacious, or when they solve problems too effectively, it creates these other issues. And I think you might even see a bit of those sort of human factors in AgeTech as well. So yeah, I think it's that people are different sometimes in unexpected ways, and in the way that they respond to things. And I think you do well by listening. And I've had to learn, of course, everyone has to learn it the hard way. And, I still struggle sometimes because I have strong opinions, but yeah, I think listening and observing and responding, I think is really important.
And so the concept of wabi-sabi translates to cleaning products as well.
It might well. I mean, I think but it's kind of relevant in a sense to when we do talk about age-related information, because the most important thing is to do no harm. In Japanese culture, it's more important to do no harm than to solve the problem.
Interesting.
If you're from a culture that just goes in and fixes things all the time, which we tend to be, like Westerners tend to be that way, whereas Japanese will always look at the downside first. So they're because they're very risk averse. So there are certain problems that may just persist because there's just a perceived risk in addressing the problem. And of course, people will admit that that's not helping us get anywhere, but you have to be very aware of the psychology that people, that sort of is part of people. So yeah, doing no harm is more important than solving the problem. It explains, or it's a big explanation for why a lot of problems remain unsolved. So yeah, it's just something that we have to work with and adapt to. The user in the market is not going to adapt to you. You are going to adapt to the user. And it is rare. It is rare. I've not seen that many concepts that can just go straight into Japan without some sort of adaptation. So yeah, really requires a lot of active listening and a lot of humility, and maybe a lot of relearning of common sense. But that's, culture is common sense, right? So if you're moving across cultures, your sense of what is common sense will differ. So you need to think of that. But it's really fun. Like, it's a really fun journey if you're actually if you are interested in that kind of thing. It's really, really rewarding, I think.
Absolutely. And yeah, it does require a lot of unlearning and relearning to make things work in such a market that is so culturally different than Western markets. I don't think it's even possible to describe it to people with words. People just have to come to Japan physically and experience.
That's right. Yeah.
Just how some of the fundamental things that we take for granted in Western cultures, and perhaps we shouldn't, perhaps we should like reevaluate them. In Japan, it's the things are just done completely differently, for better or worse.
Yeah.
From my experience, a lot of the stuff that I experienced was like better for the older adults in the population, which I thought was like amazing.
Yes, well, people respect aging adults in Japan. Like, it's a real thing, and I think this is a great place to grow old. Personally, I think I'm growing old now. I'm looking forward to it here. I think it's going to be great. So yeah.
That's awesome, and that you can actually look forward to aging in place, knowing that you will be a respected member of society well into your
Yes.
80s,
So
90s,
far,
and
I'm enjoying getting older, Keren.
Mhm.
I don't know. I mean, maybe there might come a point where I'm like, we can stop the clock here, but yeah, I feel very optimistic about, what it will be like to grow older in Japan. People are kind, and the the society is well aware of what it needs to do. I think there are a lot of challenges, but I think that people are honored and they recognize what their responsibility is. But it has to be one of the things that, we want to do with AgeTech is to help people to understand their own personal responsibility to help in that, and having good facility with tech, I think, is actually really part of that whole picture of addressing this challenge we have.
Absolutely. So that was actually my last question. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you would like to add? Any call to action to people in the audience?
Well, maybe I said some things that might sound a little bit scary and discouraging about coming here, but I want people to come and challenge themselves. And I really, the more people that show interest in Japan, I think the better it's going to be for Japan. I think we need new ideas, and I really welcome them, and we're very receptive to new ideas. So I don't want people to be put off by what I'm saying the challenges are. It's just like you can be really successful in Japan. It's if you sort of do, if you have your wits about you and know what it is that you need to do, and sort of do those things I'm saying, listen, respond, respect, all of that kind of stuff. This can be like a super, super fantastic, rewarding place to be in. So I really want, contact me. Always
Mm.
happy to speak to anybody who's looking at the market, and yeah, I'd love to hear some really, really breakthrough new ideas and concepts in age tech.
Thank you. Thank you, Dominic. And for everyone listening or watching us, the Carter JMRN group has some fantastic resources on their website. So I would highly encourage anyone to check that out. Dominic, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. It was, as always, a pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you, Keren.
If you enjoyed this conversation, you will love our deep dive into how other AgeTech innovators are expanding globally. I'll put the link right here. Until next time, stay humble, stay curious,